This is the CNC Router Tips Podcast, episode number 6. This is the CNC Router Tips Podcast, a show which answers one question from you, the listener, about CNC router tables, CNC software, hardware, web hosting, and business. I'll help you get started in your CNC hobby or business and help you cut through the confusion. Welcome to another episode of the CNC Router Tips Podcast. I'm your host, Bill Griggs, and I'm here to answer your questions about CNC router tables. And I'm really pleased to be doing this 6th episode. It's been an interesting voyage getting these first few podcasts out there to you, and I hope you're enjoying what you're hearing. If you are, please leave me some kind of feedback, either through liking me on Spreaker or by leaving a comment on iTunes. I would love to see a review on iTunes. That would be fantastic. So let's get right to today's question, which comes from Dylan. And Dylan is asking how you add draft to a part for molding.
Hey Bill, my name is Dylan from the Portland, Oregon area. No business, just a CNC hobbyist getting started. And my question for you is, how do I create a taper between two vectors in Vectric or Aspire? So I've got an outline, and then on the inside of that I have another line, and I want those to be about an inch high, but I want it to taper inward when I do it. And I believe you can use the draft function in that, but if you could provide a little bit more information about how that works and maybe show us, that would be really handy. Thanks.
Thank you, Dylan. That was a wonderful question. And just to give a little background to everyone, Dylan makes dashboards for antique cars, and he likes to do modifications. And a lot of the dashboards that you got from the antique vehicles were molded either out of plastic or they were hand finished out of wood. Now, the ones that were molded, injection molded out of the plastic, they had a unique feature on them, and because of the way that the machines that make the part are made, you have to do certain things to the mold in order to get the part to come out. So what they did was they added what was known as draft, which is a couple of degrees of slope to the side of the part. So any vertical surface wouldn't actually be at 90 degrees, because if it was, it would be difficult to get out of the machine. So it would slope in slightly so that the machine wouldn't trap the part in. And that slope was called draft, and it's usually measured in degrees. Now, to do this sort of thing in a program like VCarve Pro is not really possible unless you had a V-bit with a very shallow angle on the side. So this is something that you would want to do in a program like Vectric Aspire, which is a 3D modeling software. And Vectric Aspire has this feature built right into the software because they realized that people would be making molds with this software because it was capable of making 3D objects. And so what you would need to do would be to create your dashboard model as a 3D model. And I assume that the parts that you want to taper would be where the things like the speedometer or the odometer would go into the face of this dashboard. And maybe the sides where the dashboard slips in into the front padding of the console. So Aspire doesn't give you the ability to set individual parts of your 3D model for the drafting. And what it does is it applies the angle to every surface that is vertical on your 3D model. So to use it, you would click on an icon under modeling that says Add Draft to Model. And then a window will pop up, and it says to adjust the angle and press Apply to create a new component consisting of the visible model, so whatever model you had in your 3D view at that time that was selected. It will put the draft angle that you select on there. Now, if you select, say, for instance, 3 degrees of draft angle and hit Apply, it will tilt in the sides of your 3D model just slightly, 3 degrees, and that might be exactly what you wanted to achieve. And I suggest that you take your original dash, if you have it, and measure what the draft angle was. That way you know it's going to fit back into the opening that it came out of. So that's great if you want to put draft on the entire model, but sometimes you don't. So you might want to back up a step. As you were creating this three-dimensional representation or model of your dashboard, you probably built it in steps. You had a face of the dash, and then maybe a bezel or a ring around the edge, and then you might have had some cutouts which held the odometers, etc. So what you could do is you could create them as separate components first, apply the draft angle to just the components that you need it on, and then when you're done, let's say you have three openings in the face of it to hold round instruments, for instance, like the odometer, the tachometer, and the speedometer. Okay, so you'd create a separate component for each of those 3 items, and then you'd create another one for the front of the dashboard, and another one for the ring or flange that sticks up vertically from the back of this front face that holds the dashboard in place. And it's probably where the screws are going into, etc. So you build them as separate components, and you set the draft wherever it's needed, and where it's not needed, you don't. And then you select all of the models and weld them together, or bake them, as is known in Aspire. And that would give you a finished 3-dimensional model that had draft just where you needed it. I hope that answer helps you, Dylan, and I think it was a great question. And because your question was featured on the air, you will be receiving a free gift. If you'd like to have your question featured on the air, then you can go to cncroutertips.com/askme. And that will take you to our SpeakPipe app, which will allow you to leave a voicemail message from me. You can leave a voicemail message about a minute in length or a minute and a half. And if yours gets featured, you'll be getting a free gift as well. Remember, if you'd like to get your free gift, that you're going to need to leave your email address and your name, and I will contact you to let you know what it is that you receive. I mentioned quite a few different pieces of software during the various episodes, and I wanted to put those all in one place where it's easy for you to find information about them. So if you'd like to know more about Vectric Aspire, Cut3D, VCarve Pro, Mach 3, or any of the other pieces of software that I've mentioned in these episodes, you could go to cncroutertips.com/resources. And on that page, I laid out some of the things that I use to make my own projects easier to deal with. And there's a whole list of things there. There's books and different websites that I go to. There's some of the router bits that I use and things like that. So I highly encourage you to go and check that out. Going through these resources may help you cut through the confusion of your CNC journey. Need help? Ask me about your CNC router question on my podcast, the CNC Router Tips Podcast. I'll be glad to help or try and get you the help you need. I want this podcast to be a fun and personal experience for everyone and helpful. So let's keep it real and ask sensible questions. Please use common sense and show courtesy to everyone. That way everybody wins. Here are some guidelines to ensure that your question is qualified to be featured on the show. Please keep your questions under 1 minute in length. If it goes a little over that, that's fine, but don't ramble. If you have a website and URL, you're allowed to share it, but only once during the recording. For example, hi, my name is John Doe, and I have a blog called John Woodworks at johnwoodworks.com. My question is, and then ask your question. Spammy or disrespectful or deeply private questions will not be considered for the podcast. If you need to ask more than one question, just make each question a separate voicemail. Thanks again, everyone, for tuning in and listening to the CNC Router Tips Podcast. If you'd like to join our free mailing list, you can go to cncroutertips.com, and there's a link right there on the top of the page which tells you how to do that. Thank you so much and have a great day.